Good morning. Thank you for your time today. My name is Elena Meyer. I'm a teacher at Walters East High School just outside of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I've heard the discussion kind of continually circle back around to contemporary application. What's the significance? What's the so what, given that this is as much about citizenship as it is the Constitution? And so I'm wondering, a bit out of my bias as a newspaper advisor, in addition to teaching juniors, I'm wondering, what do you read with your morning coffee? And when you break for tea in the afternoon, what newspaper do you have? We all know that there's some, just bedrock sources that we need to have the kids in. We know they should know the Federalist Papers 10 and 51 and so on and so forth. But what do you read in the morning? Where do you find your source of the contemporary who, what, when, where?
I read the same paper Sarah Palin reads. I read the New York Times, I read the New Yorker, and then a whole eclectic other. But as the most regular read for me is the New York Times and the New Yorker.
I guess I'm not going to give you a direct answer to that question, because I'm going to say that when I prepare for asking follow-up questions, I'm not going through the Washington Post to come up with them. What do I go through? Maybe that's more useful. What do I read before I come up with the follow-up questions that I ask? Yesterday's question that I had in Unit 3 was on the Senate debates of the 1850s. One of my panels did ask people if there was any contemporary relevance to those, which was fine. But that isn't where I was going. And I went onto the Senate website, Senate Historians page, and I read what the Senate historians said about the 1850s debates. And I read Profiles in Courage when I was a younger person, and I asked the students, Daniel Webster gets a chapter in Profiles in Courage, and should he get one for being courageous? And I didn't think they answered it very well, most of them. But that's what I read. Today we're asking about, I'm assuming, I don't know this for a fact, but I'm assuming that the question today is on the loyal opposition. And I read Justice Jackson's concurrence in Youngstown, especially because I know separation of powers is getting anything. That is, after the Federalist Papers, that may be the single best thing for your students to read. There is so much that is brilliant in that opinion that can apply to almost anything, even contemporary. I would say that's much more important to read than the Washington Post.
To me, there's a difference between issues and events. And I think it's fair to ask students about events. Before I went down to judge yesterday or the day before, I watched something on CNN. I watched a governor take an action and explain why she had taken that action. So that's an event. Does it have contemporary significance and perhaps philosophic, historical significance? Yeah. I also prepare by thinking about issues, and I don't think that usually on a daily basis the newspapers that I read give me the kind of perspective that's helpful. So I try to read a pretty interesting variety. At one extreme is The Economist, which I think is one of the best magazines out there, as a way of looking at from the outside at what's happening in the United States. I love The New Yorker, some of the best cartoons ever, many of which address we the people issues. And the in-depth articles I think are terrific. Recently I've started reading Rolling Stone. It's given me a perspective that I otherwise wouldn't get, and that's one of the dilemmas of aging. We have to start being careful of not avoiding certain things. The Atlantic recently had a terrific article looking at the United States from the perspective of someone who's just spent 3 years in China, saying, here's what I think you need to be worried about in the United States, and it isn't what you think it is, it's you have a government that's not working. Nowhere in the world do I hear someone say, gosh, I admire your United States Senate. Wow, that gives me something to think about and an opportunity, if it arises appropriately in any of the questions that I'm working with, to explore this idea with our students What's the Connecticut Compromise looking like today? So, it's the best I can do.
Stephen Stokes, I teach 11th graders in Columbia, South Carolina. My question is, what are some common mistakes that first year teachers often make when they're here? I mean, if you didn't know a team was new, what traits might give that away?
I'm afraid I do have a thought. Our students, your students, they're not mine, they're yours, they look very grown up. And you've worked with them a lot, especially at the beginning. And because they look so grown up, I think we trust them too much when they get the national questions. They still need your help analytically. They need to almost go back to the beginning, and I know I've been talking to some of the mentor teachers and they're saying this is impossible. But I think you have to go back and say, guys, let's sit down and analyze the question. ATDQ. Answer that damn question. In order to do that, you have to know what it's asking. And they think they know so much now that they're going to run straight to the internet. I'm convinced that most of them are now running to Wikipedia because I heard Wikipedia recited to me about 14 times yesterday, and it's making me crazy. They need your help. They're not grown up yet. You are the folks who have that analytical, thoughtful skill who can help them make sense of the question. Where they want to go with it is fine, but they need to understand what is being asked, and that requires some analysis. If there is something in the question that is in quotation marks, they probably don't understand that that is a term of art. And they need to figure out what it means and to define it and to work with it. And to parse out what the question is really asking. So that's what they still really need you. And that's what I'm hoping you can do as teachers.
Let me add on. I mean, I can't answer your question specifically because I don't feel like I have a real perspective on what the effect of teacher is, and what I see is really the final product, and I can't always know how it got there. But what Sue's answer suggests to me as really important is the need to somehow, and I think this is really hard, somehow get the students to do research that does not consist of what they can get on the first several pages of Google. And I'm not even sure, this is a rather young crowd, a young crowd of scholarship teachers, and I'm not sure that many of you have an appreciation for what research involved in the the pre-internet day. And I don't want to sound like some curmudgeonly guy that says you can't do online research that equates to actually looking in a book. But the truth is that there is a difference between the sources that are easily available online and that are the path of least resistance for students, and genuine book learning. And it's the sort of thing that the students, it has to be explained to them, and I think they have to be forced to do. And the strategy of how you do that, is up to you. But it is a point that needs to be made to the students.